Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 10 champions that you should be looking to abuse if your main goal is to reach gold by the end of the season. So these picks here are going to be the ones that, in my opinion, if you put a little bit of time into them, they're going to give you the best chance at climbing consistently. For example, a lot of these champions on this list only take around probably 10 or 15 games to really start to be able to play them to their fullest potential, whereas a lot of other champions in the game, of course you can climb with any champion. It doesn't really matter who you play if you put the time into the pick. But since the season is coming to a close here, there's not too much time to put hundreds of games on champions like Zed or Yasuo. So these are going to be the picks right now in this patch that you should be looking to play if you want to climb for the end of the season. So that being said guys, let's get started. So first up here, we're going to take a look at the top lane and then we'll make our way down to the bot lane. So the two picks for top lane are going to be Yorick and Kayle. So the first reason to why these picks are on here is because they're very strong, or they have the potential to be strong at all stages of the game. I think in the lower ranks, it's very important to play champions if you're looking to climb consistently that can be relevant no matter the stage of the game. So Kayle and Yorick have great early games. Kayle scales extremely well into the late game. Yorick doesn't have the best late game compared to someone like a Kayle, but he does definitely have the ability to split push with the ZZ Rot portal. He has the ability to just stay relevant in the late game as opposed to some other champions like Pantheon. Usually I would be including Pantheon on one of these lists, but I've kind of come to the realization that in the lower ranks, games do usually last 35 to 40 minutes, and therefore playing a champion that is so focused on the early game and so focused on snowballing the early game isn't really going to be the best pick to climb with consistently. You want to play a champion, in my opinion, that can have an impact in the late game because that's where most of the games are going to end up going. So Yorick and Kayle both have great early games too. I think that Yorick against melee matchups that don't have gap closers, he just absolutely destroys them. Darius is a pick in the lower elos. I was looking at the stats for this champion and he's banned around 40% of the time in lower elos and he's picked around 10% of the time. And Yorick's one of the only picks that actually does very well against Darius. Yorick can do great in a lot of these matchups that are highly picked in the lower ranks just because people aren't going to expect the amount of damage he can do with his Mistwalkers in the early game. If he ends up catching you in his W, then you're gonna almost lose that trade every single time. So I think that overall, Yorick's strong early game and his ability to just get ahead and pressure with his split push is very strong for the lower ranks. And then Kayle is basically just the ranged version of Yorick that does scale a little bit better into the late game. She's got a great early game. Her ability to bully melee champions in the laning phase is very easy to do so. She's a point and click champion, and I think her ultimate is one of the best abilities in the game for the lower ranks, just because people are always gonna overextend. They're always gonna try to dive in and go for these kills on the back line during team fights, and just having your ultimate there to use it on one of your teammates that ends up getting caught out of position, or just use it on yourself if you get caught out of position, is a very good ability to have, and it's going to save you a lot of games with this champion. Now, if we take a look at the jungle role here, these two picks are going to be strong pretty much no matter what elo you play in right now, and it's Rammus and Sejuani. So both of these champions are very strong for similar reasons. Both picks are extremely tanky. With the Sejuani passive and with the Rammus W, it makes it very hard for the enemies to tear through you during team fights, and a lot of the times in the lower elos, people are going to draft these full AD compositions or these full AP compositions, and being able to rush a Thornmail on Rammus or just rushing a bunch of armor on the champion is going to make him just an extremely potent pick, and he's going to just end up solo carrying a lot of games just because people aren't really going to draft properly and they're not really going to care about their team composition in these lower ranks. Both of these picks also had the potential to snowball the early game out of control. With the Rammus, it's super easy to pull off ganks with your taunt. It's a point and click ability, and you can just go in there with your Powerball. You can flash Q in if you need to close the gap, or a lot of the time you can just use your Q, get right up to them, knock them back, taunt them, and you're gonna get a free kill like 50% of the time in the early game. And then once you do end up blowing their flash, you can just repeat gank that and just continually keep killing them over and over again. And then with Sejuani, camp the lane in the early game that does have a melee champion. So if your bot laner is playing someone like a Braum, or if they're playing Alistair, just look to camp that lane because it's going to be very easy for them to just chain the CC and easily proc your E on Sejuani. If your top laner is playing someone like a Riven or Yasuo or Darius that are very highly picked in the lower ranks, then look to camp that lane because with the Yasuo gap closer, it's going to be very easy for him to start stacking that E passive on Sejuani. She's got the point and click stun once it does get up to 4 stacks, and you're gonna almost always pick up kills if you do gank for a lane that is melee, and you can just get your lane super far ahead by doing that. So overall, both of these picks are extremely good. They're very tanky picks. They can also do a ton of damage, which just makes them overall very consistent picks, and you're just never really going to be useless on these picks either. They're not gonna get outscaled by many other junglers in the game, so they're just very good picks overall for the lower ranks. Now, if we take a look at the mid lane here, the 2 picks are gonna be Malzahar and Veigar, and then I'm also gonna include Annie in here because I think that Annie, for any kind of low elo tier list, she should always be in there just because she's one of the easiest and most effective mid lane picks to play, just because she doesn't really have too much to her kit, and if you put 5 to 10 games on the champion, then you are gonna find yourself having some good success on Annie. But in my opinion right now, Malzahar and Veigar are just better versions of Annie. They're very easy to play champions. Veigar just ended up getting that buff to his late game, and Veigar's late game, you're almost always gonna reach that in the lower elos. You're gonna get your AP stacking, you're gonna get around like 300 AP from your passive, and once you get your items on the champion, you point and click with your ultimate on the enemy carry, and you're just gonna win games by doing that. The same thing kind of goes for Malzahar. You've got your ultimate, you point and click that on the priority target, and you're gonna win your team games. So the simplicity of these champions and just their ability to deal a lot of damage very easily makes them great picks for the lower ranks. Moving along to the AD carry role now, the 2 picks here are going to be Miss Fortune and Twitch. So Miss Fortune, she's always usually going to be on these lists, at least for me, because I think she's just an overall very consistent pick for the lower ranks. You point and click with your ultimate in team fights, you do a ton of damage, and a lot of the time people are just going to be grouped up. They're not really going to care too much about how they're positioning in team fights, so you're always going to have a great chance to get a good multi-man MF ultimate off during team fights, and if the enemies do not end up like focusing you and you can get your ultimate channeled for at least a few seconds, then you're gonna single-handedly carry fights with this champion. And then as for Twitch, he's basically like the auto attack version of Miss Fortune, if that makes sense. Miss Fortune, you just press your ultimate and that's gonna do a ton of AoE damage, but with Twitch, you press your ultimate, you're gonna be auto attacking, but it's still gonna do a ton of AoE damage if the enemies are grouped up in a late game team fight. And this champion is just absolutely disgusting if you do reach the late game with him. Games usually do tend to last pretty late in the lower ranks, so if you can get to at least 3 items, even 4 items on Twitch, then your ability and your potential to carry in a late game team fight is insanely good. So I just think that overall this champion is way too good if you do end up getting a few items on him. And then I think what makes Twitch even more broken in the lower ranks is that people just aren't going to save their crowd control for him, and they're not really going to account for him if he is stealth before the start of a team fight. So what you need to do as Twitch is just always, before a team fight is about to start, or before you think a team fight is about to start, use your Q, get into a good position, and once you notice the enemy has used one of their crowd control abilities, or once you do get into a good spot to where you can spray and pray at least 3 or 4 members, pop out of your stealth, and you're just gonna solo carry team fights by using your stealth and by using your long range from your ultimate. And then lastly here, to round out the video, for the support role, the 2 picks are going to be Sona and Brand, and like the mid lane, I'm going to include one other pick here, and it's going to be Blitzcrank. So I think that Sona is just the better version of any Ardent Sensor support right now for the lower ranks. The reason for it is because she does have the potential to play make with her ultimate. She has the potential to be aggressive once she does hit that level 6, whereas these other picks like Janna, Soraka, Nami, they don't have as as much potential to be aggressive and to be the ones being proactive and making the plays. With the Janna and Soraka, you kind of have to rely on your AD carry a little bit more to be aggressive so that you can peel for them and that you can just keep them safe during team fights. But with Sona, you can do that. You can keep your AD carry safe, but you also have the potential to go for that flash ult play to end up winning your team the game. So that's why I'm rating Sona here and to why I'm recommending her as opposed to those other Ardent Sensor supports. And then for Brand, the reason to why he's on here and to why you don't usually see him as much in the higher ranks, at least as of this patch, is because people aren't going to be building the Doran's shield very often in the lower elos. A lot of AD carries will just be going for that Doran's blade, and therefore it makes it a lot easier for Brand to get his poke off in the early game, and the enemy just won't be able to sustain up as much. And also, if you do take Ignite on him, it's very easy for you to feast on these Ardent Sensor supports like the Soraka and the Janna in the early game. If you can end up just getting an EQ combo off on them, follow that up with your W, then you're going to chunk them down, you're going to push them out of lane, and you're going to just have the lane advantage and be able to press that. So I think overall, for a carry support pick that can do a lot of damage and can have the potential to snowball the early game, I think Brand is the best option in this patch. And then for Blitzcrank, I think he is a little bit more of a risky pick right now in this current meta. If you don't snowball the early game super hard, then you're not going to be as useful in the mid to late game as one of those Ardent Sensor supports like the Janna or the Soraka or the Sona. So I think that as long as you can be proactive still with the champion, if you can be getting those hooks in the early game and looking for roams with the Moby boots, he is still a pretty strong pick. But I just think that someone like Sona is going to be a little bit more consistent right now as of this patch. So that is going to be all for this video. These are the 10 champions right now that if you are looking to climb for the end of the season and you just want to get to gold, I would be looking to play these champions. It's only going to take you around 10 or 15 games on these picks to really be able to play them to their fullest potential. So you don't have a lot of time right now to climb, and therefore by playing these champions, they are going to give you the most consistent chance at climbing for the end of the season. Whereas if you are playing another pick like Zed, for example, or Yasuo, you can still climb with those picks. They're still pretty good champions, but it's going to take a lot more games on them to be able to play them to their fullest potential. So with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already, and I will see you in my next video.